Hey guys, First Responder Financial Freedom podcast number 13, lucky number 13 with my man Jason Balin, who I've been friends with for a long time. Jason's a hard money lender. He's based out of Columbia, Maryland. Him and his partner Chris own Hard Money Bankers. Jason, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I feel like I just saw you last week, and I feel like I'll see you in like 4 days.
Dude, absolutely. Aaron, Tyler, I appreciate it.
All right, dude. So let's go over some of the history you had, like beginning, middle, end. So in the beginning, how did you get into hard money lending? Like, what did you do preemptively leading up to hard money lending?
All right. So early 2000s, I graduated college. Was living in Denver for a little bit, Denver, Colorado, which I loved. I realized I was a little bit more ambitious than a lot of my friends. Moved back to this area. Felt like if I wanted to start a business, which I did, I should do it kind of boots on the ground in an area that I knew people had resources and things like that. Uh, Bounced around from a real estate agent to a mortgage broker. Worked at a bank for a very short period of time for a few years because I wanted to be in real estate, just didn't know kind of what side of it. My business partner Chris, I went to high school with, he kind of had a similar path. We flipped a few houses here and there. We bought some rental properties here and there. Real estate investing was always challenging for us. We liked the finance side of things a little bit better. Originally, we were going to plan to open up a mortgage company because we had experience with that and just be a regular mortgage lender. And after flipping a few houses and borrowing hard money, we borrowed hard money from a guy out of Texas on a property that we were purchased in New Jersey. I'm not sure why we ended up in New Jersey, even though we're local in Maryland and we preach to lend locally and to buy locally, but that's what happened. Live and learn. And we liked, I remember like one of the first properties we flipped, man, it was 9 months of very, very hard work. We ended up not really making any money on that deal, but the lender made money on that deal. This guy, Ray, we were paying him whatever it was, 15% at the time, over and over and over. And we calculated up, was like, this dude made, I'm not sure where his capital came from at the time, but this guy made whatever, $30,000, and we were scraping away and barely made anything. So we felt that lending kind of met our skill sets a little bit better. And we were more into that than getting our hands dirty on properties and just not really enjoying that stuff. So that's kind of what led us to start Hard Money Bankers in 2007.
So what did you go to college for? Was it for finance?
Negative.
Did you use your degree for no?
No. Fitness management.
Really? Was it really? I didn't know that.
Fitness management and health promoting in the College of something in nursing sciences. Something. Go ahead.
So, do you think that college was worth it going to? Was it more for the experience, or did it lead up to where your success is now? Or
I'm a big college advocate, mostly, and obviously college was a lot less expensive than it was today, in general. But I was not very mature at the age of 17 or 18, so I had no idea what I wanted to do, and didn't have much direction. Related to knowledge that I got out of college, I'm sure there was some, but my strong suit from college was, being out on my own, meeting friends, similar like-minded people and creating like good relationships with that. And it was kind of like the tweener between high school and the real world for me. And one might say it's a large price to pay to do so. But for me, it was a good experience, and I would do it.
It was like a growth phase. Like it was a preemptive growth phase into you being an adult.
That's right. Yeah, I wasn't an adult until I mean, I don't even know if I was an adult after that, but I was in a structured environment, at least, that there's only so much trouble you can cause.
We had this conversation, the podcast I did with you guys like a couple weeks ago, where it was, at what age do you think you matured? And for me, I think it was my early 20s.
I was later than that.
Yeah. Tyler, what about you? What do you think? When did you think you started maturing?
I'd say when I was 27, 28, when the market crashed and the real world hit me smack in the face. I think that was a big turning point for me because I was heavily involved in real estate then. And up until that point, just, acting like a kid, spending all the money I made, doing all that kind of stuff. And that was like a real good reset for me. Okay, it's time to grow up. When I had to move back home for a little bit and a big old piece of humble pie.
100%.
Jason, you so all right. So in 2007, you guys founded Hard Money Bankers, right? So that was right at the top of the market as the market was going up and it was about to crash. So how did you structure it? Like, how did you start the business? Because I know you guys did rounds of funding. So how did you start raising money to start this business?
So originally, the business model we thought was more like, because we didn't know, right? We're super naive to all of this, and I was in my late 20s, I guess, mid to late 20s at the time. I mean, we didn't have parents that we could tap for capital. We didn't have any. We literally no capital came from anybody that Chris and I knew directly until later on, when we had like a track record and we felt more confident to reach out to them and be like, hey, like you really should be investing in these deals. They're good. So it was all like friend of a friend or a relative of a friend or something like that we knew. But the original business model, because again, there was no pamphlet or book or mentors for us. We didn't know. We kind of started from scratch. And originally, I think our plan was to just broker loans where, hey, I was in the mortgage business and I was a real estate agent. I knew a lot of wholesale mortgage brokers and things like that. It was like, hey, we know a lot of people and real estate investors. We know lots of people that have deals. We just need to go raise the capital. That's the natural thing that I think a lot of people think. And I actually believe that it's the opposite, but that's a different conversation. And so we're like, okay, we got all these people that we think we have deals for. Let's go raise some capital. And I think the plan was originally just to broker the capital, where we have the deal, you have the money, we're going to marry the two, we're going to take, a few points. Back then it was 15 and 5, 15% rate and 5 points. Good old days. Hopefully it'll get back to that in the future again. But listen, there's a big 15%, 5 points on a deal. Like you don't have to do all that many deals. Like it's especially in the areas that we're in, it's a lot of money. So, but that was the plan, was we'll kind of marry the two and kind of act as a broker. And the first deal we ever did, and this is another kind of funky story too, was in Indiana. Never done a deal in Indiana. I don't even know if I can do a deal in Indiana. I don't. There's no licensing in Indiana, I don't think. But anyways, it was a deal that came from a mortgage broker that we knew. The guy owned 3 apartment buildings, and he was into them for like $500,000, and we lent him $150,000. We had a title company attorney that we were friends with that had a client of his that lent private capital kind of himself. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I have $150,000 for this deal. So we kind of married the two of them together. I don't think we did like a servicing fee or anything like we do now. I think we gave him like the 15% note rate. We kept the 5 points plus some junk fees, miscellaneous stuff. And we closed that loan in a different entity that Chris and I had, like our home buying entity, because we didn't even have Hard Money Bankers as an entity. And I think so it was like $7,500 plus some other junk fees, called $9,000. We got that $9,000 check, and then we went to Bank of America. We opened up our business entity and our bank account with that money. That was our first deal that we ever did, and it stayed on our books a lot longer than normal. It was like on our books for like 3 years, but it ended up working out fine. And that was pretty much like the only out of state deal that we did.
So Tyler does out of state deals. He based in California, but he invests primarily in Boise, Idaho.
Yep.
That's not something I'm comfortable with. Sounds like you're not either. Tyler's kind of got it down to a science. He just has the right boots on the ground for people doing this.
Yep.
So for hard money, like, I don't know if Tyler, you've ever done it because you do your own underwriting. Do you loan outside of the DC, Baltimore area?
So, Jason? I mean, our main stuff is, I grew up in the DC area. I lived in Baltimore area for a while. I'm very, 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 very confident in both of those areas. I know those areas very, very well. There's a little bit more of that extension to our first property that we bought in New Jersey, but we brought on a partner who had wholesaled and flipped about 100 properties in the Philadelphia, South Jersey neighborhood area, I should say. So we only lent in Northern Virginia to north of Baltimore for years, and then we opened up an office in the Philadelphia market, and then we catered there through that office. So now I'm lending in pretty much all Jersey, all Pennsylvania, all Delaware, and we've entertained doing deals outside of the geographic area. And we have on a case by case, but typically more requirements, lower LTVs, things like that.
So
and there's also enough volume for us to do here as well, but we've ventured into some larger commercial projects over the years, and we have relationships with other people now in different markets. So we have done some stuff, but it's not our core model.
I was just going to say, okay, so you guys are offsetting your additional risk by, I'm guessing, like lower loan to value, increased points, like reserves, stuff like that, right?
Not really term wise, because in my opinion, if I charge 3 points instead of 4 points, that extra 1% is not going to make or break. But if I reduce our exposure by going from a 65% LTV to a 60% or a 50 or 55, absolutely. So there's been some deals over the years, as we've grown, as our capital base has grown, as we have more experience, that we felt we were confident enough. Like we're doing a mobile home park right now in North Carolina.
So let's go over some of these terms, because I think people who are kind of learning about this stuff are going to get lost. So LTV is loan to value ratio. So when you say like 65 or 75 or 80%, you'd basically take 100% of the appraised value, and then you deduct 65% is what you would lend on that appraised value. So they had to come up with that 35% or 25% or 20%, whatever it might be. Correct?
Sometimes, yes. Yes. So I mean, so I can break it down a few different ways. You can base something off purchase price. You can base something off cost, which is like loan to cost. You can base something off the LTV of the as is value, or LTV off the after repair value. So there's different ways. There's different ways to kind of skin this cat and to make sure as a lender that you're covered. But the typical way that in the industry, I think it's described, is the loan to value is based off the after repair value. So very, very simple. If you buy a property, this is for residential fix and flips, let's just call it. You buy a property, you want to fix it up and flip it, and you think you can sell it for $200,000. That $200,000 is your after repair value. And typically lenders will lend up to 65% of that after repair value. So the max loan would be $130,000. So if you buy it for very, very cheap, you might need less cash out of pocket. If you buy it for more than that, you need the difference out of pocket. And there's more, a little bit more complex than that, but rule of thumb, that's where it is, 65% of the after repair value.
So I'll give you an example. So I'll give you a prime example, because Jason actually did this deal with me. So I have 2 houses on a cliff on the water overlooking Potomac River in Southern Maryland. And nobody could get financing for this house. One, because it was a house with an ADU, or 2 separate houses, however you want to describe it. It was on the water and it was in disrepair, so it wasn't livable. So nobody can get financing for it in these 2 houses that are waterfront property with amazing views, sat in the market for, I think it was like a year. So I called Jason and I said, "Hey, Jason, can you lend on this?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll give you." I think when we structured that deal, it was 65% of the after repair value. So then I called a bank and I said, "Hey, if I fix this house up and I get tenants in there, will you guys lend on it?" And they said, "Yeah, we'll lend on it, but we'll have to do a subject to appraisal." So basically, a subject to appraisal is it's subject to completion. So upon completion, this is what it would appraise for once it's completed. So I compared the numbers that Jason was going to let me borrow to the numbers that Nimio, the bank, was going to let me borrow. And I was like, okay, there's room for a profit in here, and I'll have plenty of equity once I'm done. So I borrowed money from Jason. I think it was 65% of the loan to value ratio of the after repair value. I think I borrowed some of the repair costs from you for that one. I really don't remember. This was a couple of years ago.
I remember that.
You remember the deal? Yeah. And then,
no, I remember the deal. No, I remember. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a 2-unit on one lot, which is uncommon around here.
Exactly. So once I got it completed, then I got the mortgage from the bank, and then paid off Jason, and then I cash flow on the 2 properties. But the only reason I got those properties because nobody could comp it and nobody could get a bank note on it. So hard money lending was a perfect example of an outside of the box deal that would work in this scenario. Go ahead, Jake.
I was just and deals like that. It's funny because if you talk to somebody that's maybe in this industry, especially like mortgage brokers, they'll be like, "Oh, can you send me your requirements, or can you send me your metrics?" And it's like, I don't really have a metrics. It kind of is. It makes sense. So I don't remember exactly how we structured this loan, Aaron, but I'm sure like you put down probably decent amount of money. Like I don't think we probably gave you 100% of it. Well, I know we didn't give you 100% of everything because I've never done that. And also, but like it's one of those things that you can get creative. Like if you qualify for 65% of the after repair value, doesn't mean that the next person was, and the next person was. My opinion on flipping houses is the three of us flip a house, we all sell it. We all potentially sell it differently, or we all renovate it differently. We all sell it for different prices. Our numbers, one of us might lose money, and one of us might make a ton of money. One of us might make a little bit of money. It just depends, right? Depends on how well you execute. You know, when we look at deals, we follow the 4 C's model, with collateral being the most important thing, and then character typically being the second most important thing. And then after that, the capacity, if they have the ability to do it, cash, things like that, and then credit. So all of those things play a factor, but it differs all the time. In this particular deal, and again, I don't remember the exact things, but all right, Aaron had good character. We came up with a number that that he had enough skin in the game, right? We made him bring enough capital to the game. He had the capacity to do it. We could get creative. Do I know what the exact value of that property was? No. Do you base it off an income approach? Do you place it on a sales approach? Typically, hard money lenders aren't looking at income approaches. They're looking more of a, hard asset resale approach. That's what at least we care about. More importantly, if we have to take back this property in a 30-day time frame, how quick, or what price can we sell it for? So, but they get creative on these things to make it work.
So minimize your potential risk if you have to take it back as a bank.
Yeah, exactly. What do you sell it for? I mean, I've done some special purpose deals before, churches, some other interesting kind of deals. And somebody like, and if you ask like a banker or something, like, oh yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to lend on that particular deal. Well, you don't even know what the details are of it. Like in this particular deal, these guys have a cost base of $5 million and they need a few $100,000 to finish it. You wouldn't do that, so yeah, or something like that. You don't know. So there's just a lot more flexibility kind of in the private sector, but things have changed now over the last 2 years comparatively to what it was the previous 5-6 years. 5 or 6 years, it was pretty common to get 100% financing on these projects. It's not very common to get that anymore, mostly because where the real estate market is. Most real estate investors are lucky if they're buying something at 100% of today's market value. A lot of real estate investors are paying over today's market value to get a project. And yeah, they're still making it up on the back end by potentially, selling it for a premium. But as a lender, I don't just look at after repair value. I'm looking at as is value. I'm looking at total cost. I'm looking at a lot of things, because let's use this as an example. Let's use the $200,000 after repair value example. So back in the day, it was pretty common that you could buy a property for $100,000, put $30,000 into it, and flip it for $200,000. Right? Yes. Those margins made sense, and it worked. So back in the day, you could typically go to a hard money lender. They'd give you the $100,000 for the purchase, $30,000 for the construction. You probably bring closing costs to the table, which end up being like 8% with points and trans and rec, depending on what part of the country you're in. You put in 8%, they put up the 100% of the acquisition, 100% of the construction, and the deal works. Deals like that aren't really around anymore. They're more closer to like, hey, I'm buying this thing for $130 and it needs $30,000 in work, and I'm going to be lucky if when it's all said and done, I net anything. So we come in as a lender to make sure that we're not lending at 100% of today's as is value, because let's say, for instance, and hopefully the way I'm explaining this isn't over anybody's head, because I do this every day and it's a little confusing, but we look at that as is value, because the last thing I want to do is, something happens to that buyer, that borrower, the next day, whatever, something happens. And all of a sudden our exposure's the as is value price, because then we lose our shirt. right? By the time I have to foreclose on that property, take ownership of it, resell it, there's deferred maintenance, stuff like that. So it's just another thing that I think smarter lenders are looking at these days to make sure at any time that they have the loan that they have built in equity that they can unload it.
That's one of the issues I see a lot of investors, we'll call it investors, when they try to buy deals, they don't take into account the other expenses for this thing. They don't take into account what are my closing costs when I buy the property? What are my closing costs when I sell the property? Am I paying for the closing costs for the buyer? What are the utilities look like? What are the cost expenses look like? Because you can't get materials right now, is your holding cost going to be extended? Like I know one of our friends who's doing a warehouse in Baltimore, they had to wait like 18 weeks for windows for their warehouse, and it's like you've now pushed out your expense of holding for 18 weeks because you can't seal the building up. So like there's a lot of things to take into account. Like you need to know more than one moving part on these deals. So for you, like so you did a bunch of funding to start the business, and you basically borrowed money at X% and then loaned it back at X%. Is that right?
No.
No.
You probably don't. I probably have never explained to you the way that our model's set. But no, it's not exactly like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can structure. You can put a fund together. You can get money lent to you. You can do bank lines. We do something that's called like direct placement.
Okay.
So in essence, let's say we do a loan for $100,000. The loan we fund $100,000. You know, it could be my money. It could be a private investor's money. Let's say it's a capital investor's money. They have $100,000 that they want to put into a deal, or they want to put into this deal. We close the loan. Simultaneously, as we're closing the loan, they're wiring us $100,000, and the loan's getting assigned from our name to the capital investor's name, pretty much simultaneously. And then we retain the servicing of the loan. So we're the lender. We're pretty much the immediate lender, and then we're assigning our rights to that loan, and then they're paying us back that $100,000 for that capital. You can do it two ways. You can either front the money and then they wire to you and pay them back, or it just kind of happens simultaneously where the loan closes, it gets assigned to them, and they're technically the lender. They're technically the lender off record because we don't typically record any of those docs. We have the ability to if we want to, but we don't. And yeah, I mean, everything's runs through our company. You know, as far as the borrower ever knows, we're always the lender.
So you get the points, they get the percentage. Is that pretty much how it works?
No, we take a servicing fee.
I'll say the servicing fee is a great idea because you guys are getting paid monthly on all those assets under management, right?
Yeah. We take a servicing fee, and as you grow a portfolio, the servicing fee ends up being more important than the points.
That's pretty amazing. So you guys only do first lien, is that correct?
Yeah.
So would you ever do a second lien position?
Probably not on our primary collateral. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously we all know the immediate inherent risks of it, but we have a mastermind group for private lenders all over the country that we've worked with. And we kind of congregate, and I've talked to a lot about that have done second mortgages. And I'm like, listen, if you're dead set on doing a second mortgage, these are the things you should look out for to protect yourself. Number one, don't be behind a hard money lender, because a hard money lender has a lot. Well, first off, get the note. You need to get the note to see what you're behind, right? But like a second mortgage should not be behind us. If a borrower goes in default, our interest rate skyrockets. There's default costs that are very, very high. And, you know, we're going to do what we can to, you know, protect ourselves as the lender, protect our investors' capital, right? So it's going to be challenging. Now, if you're behind a bank and you know that, let's say the property's worth $400,000, they have a bank loan of $50,000, and they want like another $50,000. You do it as a second mortgage. Chances are it's a little bit lower risk, because you know that bank, as long as you see the note, let's say they don't make a payment for like a year to the bank, you can calculate exactly what that balance will be. And as long as you have the ability and the capital to pay off that bank and put you into first position, then it could be safe. It's not really something that we do. And there's also not a lot of instances like that. A lot of the deals that people want second mortgages, they want more like gap funding, where it's, hey, I got someone that's going to put up 260. The value's worth 40. Can you put up like 60? And it's like, no, because I'm going to be way above, I only want to be at 65 LTV. as a first position. If I'm going to do combined loan to value, a CLTV, because I'm the second mortgage, you'd want to be significantly less than that.
So if you're basically what you're saying is if you're second mortgage, you are taking a higher risk of getting your money back if something bad happens, like a foreclosure or a death.
Well, these are the ways you have to get it back. Let's say the borrower disappears completely and never get a hold of again. These are the ways that you protect your interest. Number one, you got to pay off the first, right? You have to come up with all the capital to pay off the first. You have to go to the foreclosure sale, and the foreclosure, depending on how it gets bid, if it doesn't get bid up enough to pay the first off, and you're going to potentially get wiped out.
So take a major L is what you're saying. Don't try to avoid.
I've done 3,000 plus loans, and I don't think we've done any of them. I've never done a second mortgage. With exception as like cross collateral, like additional collateral. So I'll give you an example. We did a deal in Northeast DC about a year ago, and we wanted to be at I don't know, 200,000. I don't remember the exact numbers. We wanted to be at like $200,000 on the deal, and she was like. And she needed like $80,000 cash to close. And she's like, I don't have 80, but I had this other property. It was in Temple Hills, which is a suburb of DC in PG County. And it was a townhouse that she owed like $30,000 to the bank. And she had it on the market for $160. So we ended up upping our loan amount from like 200 to like 230. And then we put a second on that.
Okay.
So not a substantial amount, but she didn't need the, whatever it was, $90,000, $100,000. She only needed $60,000, and she did it that way. And I was confident that we would be able to protect our interests, even if like my second got wiped out. We still had enough collateral in the first. So it's just algorithmic games that you do with experience, just like when you guys buy properties. Like you play these games in your system and you stress test them. If this happens, what's going to happen here? If this happens, what happens here? And that's pretty much what it was.
So basically, use her other collateral to
And since then, she did sell that property. That loan is actually still on our books because she's running into some challenges with construction. But we negotiated a fair payoff. Because I didn't just give her the difference was $30,000, but I didn't put a $30,000 second. I put a full lien amount on it. I put the full 230 or whatever that number was on both properties. So a second for 230 and a first for 230. That's typically the best way if you're doing cross collateral to structure it. So. Because I have the ability to recoup my full funds any way I can. And then what ended up happening is she sold the property. She reached out. She said, hey, how much is, let's figure out a payoff. And we worked out on a payoff to buy down the current loan, to a smaller number. And now, we only have the one piece of collateral, but we're in a good, comfortable position.
So she's buying it down so she has less overhead every month on the primary.
Yeah.
Loan. Is that why she's doing that?
Well, I wanted to reduce our exposure on it as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so, every month that she pays, it's less exposure for you guys, which you guys like.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick too, I was just thinking. So a lot of our group members in First Responder Financial Freedom, hard money is a scary term for them, right? Yep. They hear all these horror stories, think somebody's gonna break their hands if they don't pay them back, stuff like that. Because that's how it's portrayed a lot of times, which I don't think is anywhere near the case. So we've been talking about points and LTVs and stuff like that. Let's take a brand new or fairly new investor who's going to be flipping a property. Mm-hmm. As far as terms, and I like that you mentioned matrices, because in the broker world, that's all we look at. Give me your matrices and I'll make this work. You guys are going creatively. So let's say it's myself and I've never done a deal. First off, would you lend to somebody who has no prior experience?
Yeah,
you would.
Absolutely. Okay. Some of our best. I'll tell you, some of the best performing clients that we have are newer real estate investors that have a stable job with stable income, that have worked hard to save money, and they're very, very serious and devoted to this first real estate flip. And they run into challenges along the way, like everybody does, even experienced people do, but they take it very serious, and they'll do whatever they can to make it work. So it's fine.
Okay, so let's say they're buying a house and the after repair value is, we'll use the 200,000 again. Do you structure that differently for somebody whose deal it is for their first deal? Or let's say it's Aaron and he has a track record of 10 years of doing this. what would they expect for their first deal as far as term, rate, stuff like that?
So it's about the same. The structure is about the same, give or take. 65% of the after repair value. But again, there's more to that story. Like, I'll give you an example. If somebody, and this is a kind of an interesting spin on this. Sometimes if somebody's overpaying for a property, I'd rather lend less than if somebody's underpaying for the property, even if that person that's overpaying is bringing that much more skin into the deal because they're overpaying for it. And the reason why is you don't want to get put into a situation that, you don't want to get put into a situation where an investor is not going to make money on a deal, right? It'll give them, in that particular case, they potentially away from the deal. It's just not be worth it anymore. Tyler, I'll rephrase what I just said too, if you missed it. Like, if someone's overpaying for a property sometimes and you look into that deal and if it's like, I don't see any way that these guys can make money, sometimes you want to be a little bit cautious on that, because the last thing you want to do is do a project for somebody and then they get 70% through the project and they're like, you know what, I'm not making any money on this deal, I'm going to walk away from this thing.
Yeah.
So that's a scary thing. So sometimes, like, there's a lot of deals that we'll look at that someone's really overpaying for it, and then you look at it on paper, it's like, well, you're lending 160, they're bringing $100,000 to the table. That's great, and they have good credit, and that is good on a numbers game. But the problem is what happens if they're going to lose money on that deal and then walk away from it, or hate you because you gave them a loan? They're like, oh, I can't afford, the payments are just so high that they're sucking all my, sucking all my profits out. So it's something we look at. But no, 65% of the after repair value for a newer investor as well is typically fine, as long as everything else shakes out, that they're buying it at a decent price, their construction numbers match up to what's doable, or what's reasonable, I should say.
Okay. And then as far as like points and interest, you mentioned earlier 5 and 15. What would a standard deal be now?
12.99 and 3 points.
Okay.
Everything we do is 12.99 and 3 points. If we do larger loan amounts, it's 11.99 and 2 points. Okay. Like larger projects, $400,000 plus, stuff like that, and we have a lot of those on our books as well. But some of the bigger stuff.
Okay.
So I got a question for you. So I'm sorry, Tyler, go ahead.
No, I was going to clarify. So points, I don't think we have one over this. Points is just basically a percentage point. So when Jason's saying 2 points, it's 2 percentage points, 3 points, 3 percentage points, and then the 11.99, correct, of the loan amount,
yep.
And then the 11.99 and 12.99 is the actual
interest rate,
the rate at what they're lending.
Yeah. So the easy way to look at it is if you're getting charged a 12% interest rate, that's annualized, so it's 1% every month. So that's like an easy way to calculate it in your head. And that typically hard money lenders do interest only payments, so there's no principal that's getting paid. You want to keep your payment as cheap as possible, right? Because you're going to pay it off when you resell it, or when you flip it, or refinance it if it's a rental. And most hard money lenders, including ourselves, make the buyer of the property make monthly payments. It's not like rolled in on the back end. They're making monthly payments.
Okay. Which on private money, a lot of people want those payments rolled in. Most of the guys that I lend to, that's their big plus for them, I think. Yeah. Is I did 12 and 2 on my last one, but they wanted to roll all the payments in for the 6-month term.
Yeah, I mean, we look at it exactly.
So how would I, as a new consumer who's trying to get a hard money lender, like, how would I vet my hard money lender?
Well, first off, I think you should be using, and again, this is my opinion, somebody that's local, somebody that knows the area, somebody that's local, someone that's been around for a long period of time. I've learned this, the two things. Now, keep in mind, like, until about 8 years ago, there was no institutional back capital. It was all private capital for hard money lending. Was all, and the word hard money isn't a scary word. The word hard means we're lending on a hard asset, real estate, hard asset. And it's not hard to get. It's actually easier to get. It's just called hard money. But we use the term sometimes in different communities that we're in, that we call it private money lending, because to me, it's the same thing. It's just private capital. We just are more, we have a larger company and that we kind of operate. So we just I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's the same freaking thing as far as I'm concerned. But the two things that are super important, and let's say if you are a hard money lender first, number one, you have to close on time, right? On every deal, you have to close on time. And you have to be able to give construction draws immediately or as soon as possible, because these real estate investors that you're lending money to, like, this is a cash flow game. They need to get that money rolling. So if you're a real estate investor, you're trying to get money from a hard money lender, I would ask that, and again, they're not going to tell you, no, we never close on time, or no, it takes 2 weeks to get construction money. But I would figure out a way to, if they have a referral that you call, say, hey, listen, when were you supposed to close? How quickly did you close? Were you able to get your construction money on time? Things like that. Like, there's competition. There's a lot more competition now than there was years ago. So, like, you can vet somebody by asking them things. It's whoever you feel comfortable with. I mean, I'll tell you that, this number's never been that high. It wasn't always that high, but like 50, 60% of the deals that we loan on right now, they come to us, they hear we're 13-3, 12.99-3, and they're like, okay, well, this other lender who they don't know is an institutional back lender, they just think it's another hard money lender, right? Quotes them 9-2 or 9-1. They go in that direction, and then weeks later they'll reach out and be like, I got to close in 3 days. These guys backed out. And by that point, like, I could tell them whatever the hell I want. Like, they're going to go with me. But, we honor the same terms that we told them originally, and, we close the loan. That's how I get so many loans. I mean, all of it, because they go through us, I build good rapport with them. They're comfortable with it. It's just straight cost. It's either straight costs or down payment money. A lot of these other institutional back lenders, because they're not the bank, they're not the lender, they don't know what the value is worth. They're just going off the borrowers and the buyer's numbers, right? Say, cool, what do you think it's worth? 300. Great, let's base it off 300. So I'm a very big believer that, pay more for something and get it done the right way the first time, and make it a lot less, just hassle free. And I know, because we run a group, I know a lot of hard money lenders all over the country, and they do good business. They're well capitalized. They know what they're doing. If, like, they can do loans. So again, I understand if you find an institutional back lender that's 8-1 or 8-2, although those interest rates have been really going up recently, and they're probably going to continue to. Like, it's worth it to try to go down that road. Take 2 weeks to order an appraisal. After the appraisal comes in, go through this process. And if you have a month to kill, sure, do it, because it's significantly, it's a good bit cheaper over the long run. But if you got to move quick on a deal, I would try to vet that hard money lender as quick as possible. Try to keep somebody localized, someone that's got a track record, someone that potentially has social media exposure, and, do it.
So one of the girls in the group, she said that she had one of her clients reach out to a hard money lender, and the hard money lender told them they had to front the money for the appraisal and the underwriting fee, and then ghosted the person.
Yeah,
so
it's
the money.
Yeah, I mean, that's so. If somebody's using an institutional back lender, they'll know pretty quickly by, let's order the appraisal, and then when that comes back, we'll talk. Like, typically the institutional back capital, they order appraisals when the appraisal comes in. Like, those hard money lenders that are brokers, let's just call it. Some of them lend with their own money, and then then they're selling it back to Pier Street or whoever it is on the back end, Torac. I mean, there's a lot of different companies like that. But I think a red flag, and again, I'm not against institutional back capital. I just think that you need to understand, am I trying to get cheaper terms with a longer time frame? Then I'm comfortable with institutional back capital. If I need something quick and my deal can support a little bit higher interest rate, I think I should use a local hard money lender. I think those are kind of the two big differentiators. But a lot of newer real estate investors don't know that, right? And there's a lot of ads, there's a lot of Facebook advertisements, there's a lot of exposure for, hey, I'm a hard money lender. And it's like, who do I choose? There's hundreds of them. So
yeah, almost everybody I know, right, is, if they have a little bit of experience, they have a name out there for themselves. What happens is they get all these people who are like, hey, I'm a hard money lender. If you need money, just let me know. And they get, like, the Facebook, the emails, the text messages, like, they get a little bit of everything. It's just like, spam, and for lack of better terms. A couple of years ago, I was shopping around trying to learn about the lending aspect of it. And there's one company like, oh, send us your financials and we'll lend you based upon your financials. And they're like, okay, we're gonna give you $1.5 million line of credit to go do whatever you want to. And I'm like, all right, cool. So let me start moving forward with this. And then they wanted to itemize the list.
Not that easy.
Yeah, it's not that easy. So then after they gave me the approval and I paid the underwriting fee and whatever else, and they were like, okay, so now that you are approved, here's the itemized list of 6 pages of things that we want you to highlight. So how many screws will you use in this drywall? How many sheets of drywall will you lose? What's your cost per square foot for finishing drywall?
It's institutional backed. Like they don't have control over that. Like
that's one thing I don't think a lot of people understand is like there are different rules for different lenders. So this lender, like I do a lot of my own work. Jason, I do a lot of my own work. So I'm like, I don't know what my cost per square foot for drywall is. I know if I hire it out, it's going to be exponentially higher, but for me, it's going to be this amount.
I know.
So for you guys, when I work with you, you're like, Aaron knows what he's doing. Like he has experience. Like he can finish the stuff.
And here's another thing to think about. The lender,
like Aaron can get something done for $40,000 that might take a newer real estate investor $60,000 because they got to hire a GC, they have to do other things. And
if you put yourself in the lender's shoes and you say the lender cares about the collateral, what happens if these guys don't perform? And if you don't perform, and I got to take that back to property, I can't get it done for 40. It's going to take me 60 to do. Now, again, we're a little bit different because our entire business model is I'd rather have slightly less exposure and lend and like be a little bit, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. We're trying to be a little bit less exposed and then give our borrowers free will to just kind of do whatever they want because I don't want to hold their hands. I do not want to micromanage a project and I don't want to go to any of your projects, Aaron, or anybody else's. I mean, we have a full-time inspector in-house. But like, I would rather, if someone's like, hey, why are you lending me, 100, this person's lending me 110. And it's like, hey, listen, I would rather not, this person might micromanage you. I don't want to micromanage you. Like when you need a construction draw, show me that, a quarter of the work was done. I don't need an itemized list. Show me a little bit of work was done. We'll give you some money. Show me a little bit more work was done. And that's suited us well for the last 15 years because, it gives the buyers more flexibility, knowing that like we're not going to beat them up, but also don't give me a fake, a fake draw request. Like I've had a borrower that we did a $50,000 construction reserve. I know it was going to cost them $80,000. I just did, and they were like, "Nope, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to push hard. I'm going to get it done in $50,000." Like they were over budget from day one. And, we were a little bit lenient on them on the front. We're like, okay, here's some $10,000, keep it going. And then finally we're halfway through our budget and they're not even close to being near halfway through. And they're like, well, you were really lenient with me on the first 2. And I'm like, you're right. But the problem is you still have a ton of work that's going to be done. And we had this conversation up front that like, this is an $80,000, $90,000 project. You thought you were going to get it done for 50. She was like, yeah, well, my contractor kind of screwed me. And I was like, I get it. I get all that. So why don't we do this? You had extra funds that you had to begin with. Why don't you front this next set of funds yourself? And then we'll come in again. So like, these are things we can do on a small localized basis. It doesn't have to be scripted. It doesn't like, if it makes sense, it makes sense. I mean, there's deals where it's like, cool, here's all the construction budget, go do it. Right. If you needed to, like there's no kind of strong list of what needs to be done. It just depends on the situation.
So I'll give you an example. So Jason did a hard money loan on a deal in the Mount Airy property up on Penn
Ridge.
Shop. Yeah, on Ridge and Penn Shop. So the house was on the market, it was for sale, it was under contract, and I was coming to the end of the terms with Jason, and they extended it for me. One, because it was done, but also it was extended out because when one of the realtors was showing the property, there was 2 heating systems. They didn't realize one of the heating systems was turned off, so they thought they were going to do us a favor and turn the other one off. We had a busted pipe because it froze and then flooded the brand new basement and the carpet. So they extended it out for us because of the relationship we had in the past we had for them. So he didn't hit me over my head and he knew what was going on. It goes along with the relationship that you have with your lenders. Like it makes a difference for how they view you. Like, but if I was like, 60% or 80% done with that property and there's not a foreseeable future or an end line or in a end zone, then he might be like, oh, well, we need to redo these terms again. And figure out what we're going to do and to restructure it.
Yeah, I mean, I think most localized hard money lenders, like, they're reasonable, but it's relationship based, and you want to do what makes sense. I mean, I could be like, hey, nope, you're over the term, Aaron. We're gonna charge you another 3 points. We're gonna do this. We do that because legally in our loan documents, I can do that. But that doesn't mean that just because it's in your loan documents, I want to make a business decision. It's, hey, I'd rather take care of this particular client, knowing that he'll come back to us and do another deal.
Yeah,
if somebody completely disappears, which has happened as well, then you're going to take, the hard money lender is going to take the the full loan docs to whatever they can. But it's a relationship game, and that's why I kind of preach locality. That I think if you have somebody that kind of local, you can build a relationship with. I like, or a rep there that's maybe local. I think that goes a long way.
It's huge too, because a lot of new investors, all investors, we're all dreamers. We always have the rose-colored glasses, and that's what I always try to tell a lot of the newer people is, hey, go talk to a hard money lender. Don't waste their time, but go talk to them and say, hey, here's the deal I want. What are you able to do on it? They are going to give you a objective analysis, and it's always like, hey, if that lender is not agreeing with you on your ARV or your construction costs or any of these things, you basically usually you save yourself a ton of money. Yeah, can they be wrong every once in a while? Yeah, we all can. Or too conservative. Yeah, but most of the time, it's a very good way to vet your deal without getting too far down that road. Like you said, oh, this is only going to cost $50,000, and then now actually the rehab budget's $80,000 or $100,000, and now you're screwed.
That's a good point, because if you're not going to like a localized hard money lender who's going to lend their own money, first off, that person might not know what the values are, or they might not know if it's a good deal or not. They might just say it is, but it doesn't happen very often that we're lending on a project that's not good or that we don't think the client's going to make money on. And our process, which is very different than everyone else's process, because I know what everyone's process is. Institutional backed lenders' process is, cool. Let's base the numbers off your numbers. Like, let's say you're newer in real estate investor. It's like, cool. What's your after repair value? What's your purchase price? What's your construction budget, right? None of that stuff's getting verified up front when you're committing to proceed with that lender, right? This is your numbers, and hopefully you know them right. Because if you don't, your deal's changing, right? The appraisal's coming in low, the construction inspection's coming in high, and then all of a sudden, you thought you only needed $40,000 cash to close. Now you need $60,000 cash to close, and your local hard money up the street actually was a better deal than this institutional back lender. You didn't realize this until a month later. So when we talk to real estate investors, and it's interesting because I know when newer real estate investors talk to banks or institutional back lenders first, because what ends up happening is like, hey, what do you need from me? Can I send you, whatever, my tax returns, my bank statements? Can I get and I'm like, what we care about is the address of the property, your purchase price, and the construction, and what you think the construction costs are. If I have those things, I can pretty much determine if this investor knows what the hell they're doing or not, right? Because there's a lot of very easy tools to be using online, not just including multiple listing, but I can jump on our local charter, our local MLS very, very quickly and see if they're, based on their purchase price, if they're buying it at a good day one value, based on their construction budget, if that's going to be reasonable. We all know that costs of goods, construction is so expensive compared to what it was years ago. Someone's like, oh yeah, it doesn't need that much work. I can get my guys in there, get it done for $20,000 or whatever. And you go and take a look at the property, and it's like, that's not even close. Like, all of a sudden, they're discredited. It's like, yeah, these guys don't really know what they're doing, or they're overpaying. So if I have that alone, I can tell somebody, number one, I can tell myself if it's going to be a good project and if this guy knows what he's doing. And at the same time, I can tell them, if I think it's a good deal or not. And that only takes a few minutes, right? So you do that. And I feel like that's just a way better industry path to take anyways. And cool, let's go spend $550 for an appraisal. Let's go do this. And in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see what we come up with. It's, hey, I know in 5 or 10 minutes if this is something that is doable or not.
So one of the things in terms of the structure of the deal, so they get the loan from you, you agree to it, you approve it, all the terms are 12.99 and 3 points. So what's next? They go into the property and they start doing the work, and they complete some items, and they ask you for a draw. So can you explain how that process is and what it is?
Yeah, so we do reimburse off completed work. We're not like some lenders that are out there that front draws. Yeah, and there are some. There's a localized company that does that. They front the first draw. The buyer would start the work, and then we would reimburse. And we don't necessarily honestly, we're pretty fast and loose on it, as long as because also we've pre-vetted these people up front to make sure that they have good characteristics. So again, I don't want to micromanage them. If I feel like I got to micromanage them, for the most part, we're not doing the deal. But we have a full-time inspector in our office. So let's say it's a $50,000 construction budget, and they go to our website, fill out our form. We have a real quick form, and it says what was done, how do we get into the property, where do you want your funds to be wired to. So they fill it out, and it's like, I did some demo. We'll be done the roof by Friday, and some other stuff, and they want 10 grand. Sure, that sounds reasonable. Dave will go out. Sometimes they'll just send in pictures, but ideally, Dave in our office will go out that day or the next day, because I'm in local. I have a DC market and a Baltimore market. Our Philadelphia office has their own inspectors up there, so he's in DC one day, Baltimore the next day, DC one day, Baltimore the next day, and I can get funds out the door in 24, 48 hours and move very, very quickly. Which that is a huge for someone like Aaron, who's done multiple deals with us, or some of our clients. I mean, I've done over 100 loans for some clients over the years. They know how important that is for cash flow management. And that's one thing that we put resources to, like paying a full-time inspector, because that can't be a weak process.
No, especially because on a draw schedule, they complete something, they call you, say, hey, can I get a draw? Which is, I want some of my money back towards paying off like my construction costs, or if I have guys working for me, the draw goes to that. But you have to have completed items. So one thing in another podcast we did is, don't use pictures as a way to prove that it's done, because pictures can be taken at the right angles to make it look like it was done or only partially done. So if I am borrowing something, I show them the whole picture by taking a video and sending it over. And you can do that multiple ways, and every hard money lender is going to be different, but you can easily take a video of the property, put it on YouTube, make it private, and send it to your lender, show that this is what actually done, and show all angles, and try to create a relationship with them to say, hey, look, you can trust me. This is why. Don't waste your time and your gas coming down here, especially at $4.15 a gallon right now. But there's ways to build relationships. You just got to think outside the box sometimes.
Absolutely.
You can come over here at $6 a gallon in California.
Oh my God,
it's beautiful.
So Jason, we're at 52 minutes, so we've got an hour to do this thing. So moving forward, are you guys changing any of your structure? Are you changing your numbers? I know the rates for everybody else is going up. What's the plan for the future for hard money lending in your eyes?
Very good question. So terms are staying the same. I think that's helpful for a lot of real estate investors. And I think that potentially will get us, if you're comparing a hard money lender to an institutional hard money lender, that's apples and oranges, not apples and apples, right? But as these rates go up, I think a lot of these real estate investors that were using institutional capital probably don't want to mess with it anymore. It's just too much of a headache. The terms aren't all that out of whack. So our terms are staying the same. As of now, we don't have any plans to change. It's going to stay at 12.99 and 3. Our capital investors are still happy with the returns that they're getting after we make our servicing fees. So they're good there. We've had discussions related to reducing our exposures on some of these deals. I'm not sure if we're changing anything up LTV wise. And where I'm getting at is, the interest rates going up 200 basis points is really a 20% difference. I mean, if you do the math, if you had a purchasing power of $100,000 at a 3.25% interest rate, well, at 5.25% interest rate, that purchasing power is $80,000. Now your monthly payment's the exact same. So that's a 20% drop. Do I think the market's going to drop 20%? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, the rate alone indicates that, but there's also still a very limited amount of supply. So things still typically sell for above market, at least kind of in the median house. Like we live in the median housing price world, our loans. We try not to do stuff in the lower or higher stuff. Have we? Absolutely. But we try to base everything off median housing price. First time home buyers are buying these newly renovated houses, things like that. Sorry, we're trying to stay. But we're trying to stay aware of what's going on in the market and take that into consideration of, hey, the ARV was 200,000, but let's be a little bit cautious on this, knowing that ARV might only be 180 or 190, in a few months from now. And again, there's a lot of factors that go in. It's not just the collateral. It's how well they bought the property. Do they have experience? How much cash are they willing to put into this deal? I mean, we're constantly like scratching our heads on some of these deals and saying, you know what? This factor is not great, but this factor is great. Or this one's so. Let's just make them bring more cash to the table, or there's something related to that. So I don't know. I mean, I thought the market was going to change 6 years ago and drop, and it just keeps going up.
Yeah. So like one of the things that we talked about before is like we sold and restructured a lot of our assets the last couple of years preemptively to see if this market does crash, we have access to capital to buy even more projects and properties. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. There's not enough data points out there to really indicate what will happen. It's a different animal than 2008. The rates have gone up higher in the last 3 months than ever before. The speed of which it climbed from like 3.25% to 5.25% or what the numbers are. But your numbers are going to be pretty much the same until further notice.
Yeah, ours is going to be this. Yeah, ours is going to be the same. I'd like to up my interest rates, honestly, but
15 to 5, right?
Well, that was going to be good for you guys, right? Because money will tighten up institutionally when that happens, and then for you guys, you guys are ready to roll.
Exactly. Like I want to lend to good real estate investors with low headaches, and if I got to make slightly less to do so, I'm willing to do that. I mean, there's a number that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I could have done a lot more volume if I had lowered our terms a few years back, but it wasn't worth it to us. I did the math. I'd have to take on more staff. I'd have to have more headaches, do this, and our net wouldn't have been that much. Like we found our sweet spot of what our cost is. So we're good with that. But we're always about, I could lend, I'm capitalized enough that I could do twice as much volume. 3 times. We lend $40 million a year. And we've had that same portfolio size for years, and I could do more overnight if the right deals came along. So we're chasing the right deals. There's also like what's happening today might change tomorrow, and vice versa. That we're always going to do the best deals that we have in front of us at any given time. In the middle of March 2020, when COVID hit and everybody stopped lending, like we still lent aggressively. I mean, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done 100 loans in 1 month. And I had that ability to, a ton of them, really good deals, but we were chicken and we were more conservative. At my average deal then, this is crazy to even say this, my average deal was like 50% LTC for a month, meaning that like a borrower bought a property for $600,000 and they put up 300 and we put up 300. And I did 20 deals like that, 15 to 20 deals like that in the month of March, or whenever that does. And then we went back to normal stuff as things, but like we were uncertain, like we didn't know what was happening, and we were like, is everything going to crash? But all of those real estate investors, all their capital got tapped, like they were done. They didn't have any capital. That every institutional peer street pulled out. Everybody pulled out on the secondary market. So anyone that was using institutional backed capital got tapped. A lot of the hard money lenders that we knew locally that were basing stuff off bank lines, they couldn't tap those lines. Some of them weren't. People were unsure. Now I was sure. I remember one of our capital investors. We had one capital investor out of all of them that were a little bit nervous. They're like, "Yeah, maybe we should sideline some of our capital right now." And I was like, "Why?" "Well, you don't know what the market's going to be." And I'm like, "Well, what happens?" And I explained this exact deal that we had just funded. I was like, "What happens if you get this deal and for $600,000 and the borrower puts up 300 and you put up 300? Would you do that deal?" It's like, "Yeah, absolutely." But like, well, that doesn't mean that you stop lending. That just means you readjust. or you stop buying, that means you just readjust your formula to what makes you more comfortable. And that's what was comfortable with us at that time.
Minimize your risk. Back to minimizing the risk again.
Exactly. Like, I'm always going to be lending. We're always going to be doing stuff. I don't care if the market goes down. It just can, go. Like, for instance, today I'm lending $100,000 on this asset. If the interest rates go up more and all of a sudden, like, I'm looking on MLS and like stuff selling for under market value, tomorrow I might only lend 90 on this asset. Maybe I'll lend 110 on this asset. Every deal, it's like investing in any asset, right? Every deal you do, you're going to take the most recent knowledge that you have and make the most educated decision you can on that particular deal. It doesn't mean I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to readjust it.
So if you can go back and give your former self advice, your younger self advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Anything in general?
In general, like you can go as deeper as you want to, or as broad as you want to. Because your 17-year-old self is different from your 30-year-old self, which is different than your 40-year-old self.
My 17-year-old self probably should have just done whatever I was doing at 17.
Like, I don't know. I would have known any better. I would have known better anyways.
I mean, I was always ambitious to do stuff, and I, wanted to make money.
And like, here's the thing. Like, I'd like to say that, hey, I should have started earlier, but I don't think I was ready to start earlier. I really wasn't. And I will say that there's people out there that are really like fast and loose, and they move quick, and they kind of don't think through the end. And I think some people could be very successful doing that, while other people could, implode. But there's a lot of successful people that I'm friends with that are like that have just moved very, very, very quickly. They don't overthink it. They just take action. They do. I would say I'm kind of in between. And there's a lot of people that just never take action, that are super smart. And it's like, why aren't you doing this? You have the capital. You have the experience. Just do it. I'm a little bit in the middle. I mean, my business partner, Chris, and I, we're very slow and steady wins the race. Like every year, every year our bottom line net grows. Every year, our net worths grow. Like, that's just how we've been. I've never hit a home run. I feel like I've never hit a home run. I hit singles every day, all the time, regular basis. And, sometimes I'm envious of the people that do hit home runs. All of a sudden they're kind of chugging along, and then they're all of a sudden just kill it on a project, and they're all the way up here. But in my mind, I'm, kind of a mix of, we kind of just slow and steady, and it's not get rich overnight. It takes time, and it's going to continue to over and over and over and over and over. But hopefully at the same time, by following that model, I don't want to be like, really rich, and then the market shifts and you're dead broke. And then you have to do it again. And you have to do it again. And you have to do it again. I don't want to do that. I just want to continue to be slow and steady, and it's going to take time.
So what's your motivation?
I
know you got a wife and kids, so that's one of them.
Besides family?
Yeah, besides family.
Man, got tough questions. Can't you ask me like my favorite book or something?
All right, what's your favorite book?
I don't know. Motivation, like this stuff is fun. Like I like doing this stuff. Like this is enjoyable on a regular basis. Running businesses, doing marketing stuff, profitability, real estate investor making money. Like, one thing that's really fun is when a lot of people get to make money together and they're all successful. They're all on the winning team, right? So like, I do a loan for, let's say, a friend of mine that's a real estate investor, and they flip a property. I make money on it. My capital investors make money on it because they're lenders on it. Like, there's just so many people that are growing with you side by side that, you've helped enable do that. Like, that's a big winner. My favorite book as of today still is Psychology of Money. I really enjoyed reading that last year. I'm going to reread it again.
Yeah,
I really like that book. And I think it's for everybody, for all ages, for everybody. Like, I think depending on where you're at, you'll get something else different for it. But it's very interesting. And I think, especially where we're at right now in the market, I think Psychology of Money is really important for a lot of people to read, because there's the whole fear of missing out. There's, a lot of stuff's going on with crypto right now and NFTs and things like that. And I think Psychology of Money sums up why we all think the way that we think, right? Like, I've got a FOMO of crypto, and I buy a lot of crypto, and I'm still like, I still want to be like, okay, I'm good now.
But like then I want to buy more, but I'm too scared to buy more.
Same thing for Metaverse. Like we had an interview about Metaverse a couple months ago. And it was like, you know, you don't want to buy it at $13,000 for an acre in Metaverse right now.
Yeah.
But in 10 years from now, it might be $100,000 for that acre. We just don't know. So we have fear of missing out.
The crypto thing fucks with me, dude, all the time. I wish I was like $100,000 in this. I mean, the biggest crypto buy bit, I took out 20,000 out of one of my brokerage accounts, and I put 20,000 into some Bitcoin, and I do like I dollar cost average that. So like every week I'm buying Ether and Bitcoin, you know, regularly, and then I did that 20,000. Like I've got a decent amount in there, but like there's that thing that like it's like, hey, this is the one thing that like, hey, all of a sudden you put like $50,000 into this and it's worth 50 million.
Yeah.
And like that's a big thing. And like I think it will happen, but like we're all too scared to do it. I mean, think about a few years ago when Bitcoin was so low and then it went so high and then it, you know, stays at like 40 now. 40,000 now. So it's like it's a funky thing. And real estate investing is like that as well. A lot of, you know, keep in mind, a lot of real estate investors are hungry to get into real estate investing right now because real estate's hot. Real estate's hot. Buy. Everyone needs to be in real estate. Do they right now? It's at the top, arguably. So the FOMO thing,
or is it? Because it's been years now.
Or is it? Or is it? I don't know. So the psychology of money explains why we all have FOMO related to a lot of these topics. So I don't know. I like that book. I listened to that, I think mid last year. And after I finish this book, Founders, that I'm reading right now, another like week or two on that, I'm going to probably add that back to my list to do again.
One of the things that I really want to highlight is that so I've known you 25 plus years. We've been closer the last 10 years probably. And one of the things I want to highlight is that like you really want to see people succeed. You want you to succeed. You want people around you to succeed. You want everybody to succeed. And that's part of relationships and network that you build. What's that quote? It's one of my favorite quotes is rising tides raises all ships. So you want everybody to come up with you. It's like Adam Sandler, like he brings all the same guys in all of his movies and he brings them in with him. And he's like, if we're all going to make it, he's like, if I'm going to make it, we're all going to make it. And that's an important thing to have. Like you can't be selfish. You can't be totally selfish in this kind of investing realm or real estate, whatever it might be, crypto, real estate.
There's no need to. There's enough to go around for everybody, and like you need everybody. Like I need people to do loans for. They need me to lend them money. I need to invest in syndications. You know, like all of it. They need it goes a long way.
And touching on relationships and networks, like we're going to a friend of ours mastermind meetup next week in Baltimore. So we're going to spend like 3 days together and go over some mastermind ideas. And that's one of the things I've missed out on the last couple of years is that I like in-person networking. Usually depends on where it is. And Jason used to host meetups in a bar restaurant where you could actually do some FaceTime with some people, and you get some really big players out there, and you get some people who have no idea what they're doing, and it's an interesting mix of people, but it's kind of a way for you to network and get out there and kind of grow with other people. There are takers who are people just going to take for all the information and never give back or never plan to. But then you get people like Jason or a couple of other of our friends who are like, hey man, like let me bounce this idea off of you, and then later on you can bounce an idea off of them. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it's very important to have in any of investing in relationships.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we're at an hour and 8 minutes, so let's wrap this up. Jason, got any final thoughts for us?
No, appreciate you guys having me on. This is it's a good little podcast. It's a good niche that you guys are doing.
Thanks, buddy.
So it's good.
And what's the name of your podcast that you do with Ian?
So our podcast is Real Estate Reserve Podcast. It's, it started to be geared towards localized fix and flippers and rental property owners. And over time, it's suitable for anybody nationwide that wants to do anything on the residential investment side or the commercial investment side. Ian's real heavy in self-storage right now, and we've invested in quite a few of those projects as well. So anything residential or commercial real estate investing nationwide at this point, we have a lot of really good guests as well.
And if people want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
So hardmoneybankers.com is our main lending site, hardmoneybankers.com. Jason at hardmoneybankers.com is my email. 240-994-2284 is my phone number.
All right.
Nice.
So Tyler, me and Tyler have been looking at doing some lending as well. Tyler does more than I do. I'm looking at getting into it a little bit. This was a very helpful and insightful podcast that I'm very happy to put out there because I think it's going to help a lot of people realize what they need as other options other than institutional lending. So thank you for being on podcast number 13 with my buddy Jason Balin, my boy Tyler Thrush, and I am Aaron Foster. Thank you for joining us and spending some time with us, listening to our jibber jabber. And we'll see you next week. See you guys.
Peace.